Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to White Sands Self-Care Community. I am your host, Laura Cross, where we are all about providing education, resources, connection, and collaboration. And I have the pleasure today of having my guest, Deborah Charnes. She used to work a very high-pressure international corporate market communication job for over 20 years and traveled all over the world, decided to leave that in 2011, and has now dedicated that same energy into positive transformation for not only herself, but for others. And obviously, she's still loving traveling the world because she is joining us today from Costa Rica. As you can see, her beautiful background back there. So, Deborah, can you tell everybody a little bit about kind of what that was like and why you decided to change and get out of that?
I was going to say, you said it much better than I could have. I think what happens to a lot of us is we get settled in a routine, even when those routines are not healthy and are not positive. And our society tells us that it is appropriate. We talk about type A personality. I was a type A personality. We talk about workaholics. When we talk about an alcoholic, it sounds bad. When we talk about a workaholic, it doesn't necessarily sound that bad. At least I interpret it as, oh, they're very faithful employee and they're a good employee. And I think that was my life. I worked 80-hour weeks and very often 7 days a week. And it was extremely stressful. At one point, I was hired for one company specifically because of my crisis relations management experience. And when you work in crisis relations, it means that crises are normal. And again, we normalize what maybe should not be normal.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we all, for some reason, we seem to have grown up in that era where, you're only doing well if you're working hard, you're doing this, and we totally lose ourselves. I always call it a rat race. You're going to get hung up in one rat race or another. And if you're dealing with crises all the time, it's not like we don't have our own crises to deal with, but I think doing that, possibly you got caught up even more in other people's crises, not even realizing that you might have been suffering your own.
Of course. Oh, but mine, no, I shelved mine, of course. And I never talked to anybody about any of my issues. I also wanted to mention I am a baby boomer. And for those of us baby boomers, it was so common that our parents went through the Depression. And we were taught to, be so thankful for any job we had and to do our best to keep that job, because at any time you could lose your job and lose everything.
Yeah. And my parents were in that baby boomer traditional, era. I'm a Gen X, but still, you always pass down what you know and what you've been taught. And, now sometimes, I've mentioned it before, but now we have millennials and stuff where sometimes you have people looking at them acting like they're lazy. And it's not that they're lazy necessarily. They've just learned to work smarter, and they've seen their parents come home stressed, sick, frustrated. They don't want that for their life. And it's hard. It's kind of I think it's a gap we have to kind of try and, fill between those generations for a new understanding.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I try to do as part of my lifestyle is I try to disconnect once a week. It's actually one of the chapters in my book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, is about doing a digital disconnect or a technical tech Sabbath. And for people of any religions, and what researchers have always found, and of course, human resource managers usually know this, but when you give people time off, they are more productive. When you give people less hours to work per day, they are more productive. Likewise, when you take a once a week break from all of your tech devices, because, we were talking about aholics. I would definitely say that I'm a smartphone-aholic or a social media-holic.
Mhm.
And I think it's extremely healthy to back off once a week. Some people, of course, give it up for Lent, and that's also a great idea. I think it is so important to remove ourselves from the way that most of us are so attached to all of our devices. And again, I mean, since I'm a baby boomer, of course, I grew up when you only had a landline phone, and anytime you were out of the house, you were totally unreachable. And you know what?
You survived,
Nothing
didn't you?
bad happened. I
Yeah.
have an anecdote though. My brother is still a little bit less, I don't want to say he's not tech savvy, but he avoids getting so connected to his devices. And he was also really good with his children about limiting their time on the computer and very little time on television. But I once was meeting him at the Los Angeles International Airport, which of course is huge. And I had to rent a car. I got there before, so I had to rent a car and I had to drive by and pick him up. And he didn't have a cell phone. And I thought, oh my God, how on earth am I going to find my brother if he doesn't have a cell phone? Of course, there was not a problem. I found him right away.
Yeah.
But again, it's just, we are, again, the normalizing how everything has to be with our devices.
Well, and it's a fine line, and everything in life is a balance. I mean, some people just look at it as, totally evil. Other ones, can't live without. I mean, it makes life, yes, easier and simpler. A lot of things you can do, but I agree, you do need to spend that time and cut away. I try to get in the habit, if nothing else, that when we go out to dinner, it's like, just put the phones down. Can we not just have a conversation and not, check the phone every few minutes? If you're waiting for some emergency call, okay, got it. But otherwise, you can start out small. Maybe some people can't detach for a total day, but at least start small and maybe detach for dinner or lunch or something, and actually communicate because we lose a
Right.
lot, with that nowadays. But then again, without technology, you and I would not be able to communicate and have this Zoom while you're in Costa Rica and I'm in Missouri. So yeah,
I was
pros and
thinking the
cons for
exact same
everything.
thing. Right.
Yeah. But right now, so what do you do now? I know you help motivate people positive. You have a lot of different modalities. I know yoga is one, or some others. You have a lot of different programs that you work with people. Do you want to talk about some of those and what you do?
Sure. Well, I am a certified yoga therapist. And what I like to say is that the emphasis is on therapy, not yoga, because most people identify yoga with the physical aspect of yoga. And I'm not saying I don't do that with my clients, but there's so much more. And sometimes there may not be much of a physical aspect, or sometimes I might recommend that my clients take hikes in nature, or I might recommend that they go dancing, which are all, of course, physical activities. But I'm not all about the postures. As a yoga therapist, we look at every single person separately. I do a 90 to 120 minute intake, and then I come back and I give them a very lengthy protocol of what I recommend they do. And I like to meet with them for at least 6 weeks, guide them on different elements of the protocol, and then also tailor it and say, hey, what's working for you, what's not, and so tweak it so that it works. And I also love doing therapeutic workshops. I have several therapeutic workshops in Texas and in Utah already planned for the next couple of months. One of them is called Chant and Be Happy. And it's because when you sing, beautiful things happen in your brain and in your heart, and you end up being happy. And of course, in my book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, I do give the research findings behind that. Another one of my workshops that's coming up, and I do all my workshops both in person and virtual. Another one is called DEM, DEM, bones. And it's about bone health. It's also about chronic pain, because 1 in 5 Americans have chronic pain. Aside from the incredible healthcare costs that it incurs, most people with chronic pain also have emotional, fallouts. And it also is one of the leading causes for disability at work and missed work days. And September is actually Pain Awareness Month, and that is why I'm doing workshops for the bones, again, DEM bones, coming up, because again, the most common form of chronic pain is in the back and in the spinal cord. Well, the spine and the spinal cord. So it can be neurological or it can be musculoskeletal. So that's another one of my workshops. And then another one that I like, and these are all ones that are near and dear to me, and I've been doing these for about 8 years, is called Gutsy Yoga. And Gutsy Yoga is all about digestive health. And from the time I was very young, from the time I was an adolescent, I had both digestive, I will never not have it, but everything is controlled and everything is fine and I don't have any problems. But I do have digestive disorders, and I also have musculoskeletal back slight deviation in the form of the spine, which can cause pain. And when I was an adolescent, I had severe pain just by standing and sitting up. Again, now I have zero pain, but I still, of course, I've got my same back.
Yep.
The same thing with my digestive disorders. I remember I was living in Mexico City at one point, and after one of my work sessions, I took the bus to the emergency room because my pain was so severe. And again, I have the same intestines, but I don't have any problems. So again, I have those chronic issues. My I don't want to call them disease states, but whatever the diagnoses were will be with me for life, but I have zero pain. And that again is one of the reasons why I wrote my book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, because it took me a long time to find solutions, and I want to share it with others. And I also just wanted to mention regarding pain is, you obviously know all about the opioid epidemic, and it is, I just cannot understand how we are living in such a knowledgeable and advanced country. And the Centers for Disease Control has for many years said that opioids should not be the first line of treatment. The Centers for Disease Control encouraged acupuncture for pain, Tai Chi, and yoga. I mean, that's wonderful that the Centers for Disease Control many years ago said this is what doctors need to do. And yet it's still too common that they are prescribing the pills. And last year we had a record high, more than 100,000 people that died from synthetic opioid overdose. I mean, to me, that is just unacceptable. And I don't understand how we're not doing something to address that.
Yeah, it's insane if you think about it. I've met other people and a gentleman that feels like he's just banging his head on the wall because you have this natural stuff that can help, yet he can't even get practitioners or stuff to listen to him. And, there's so many options out there. And a lot of us fight to find people that will accept the fact that we have some natural remedies. I don't want to be put on drugs. I want you to work with me. And some of them have had doctors that flat out say, well, then I can't help you. You'll have to see somebody else. But yeah, how we got so far removed and got that way, I have no idea. I've done my round with the painkillers, muscle relaxers. And after my husband died in 2004 and got off the anxiety medicines in 2005, I've never taken them since. I refused to. And I've never felt better or healthier, because I have learned from you and many others that when you treat the body as a whole and you don't just try to keep fixing one symptom, because it's all interconnected. A lot of it, majority of it's stress related, which you probably experienced in that other high pressure job that you have. But people don't look at it that way for some reason. They just think they're fine, even though they might have aches and pains. And it's really your body trying to tell you that something you're doing or the lifestyle you're living is not sitting well with you. And yet we wait until we get injured or hurt and then go to the doctors. And then the first thing they do is throw, Motrin, drugs, whatever at you here. And it takes it away for a little bit, but it's not fixing it. If you don't do something to fix the whole situation, we're stuck.
And, I think of just very simple procedures that I have had when the doctors automatically prescribed me drugs. And I said, what is this? They said painkillers. And I said, I don't need them. So for example, after my daughter was born, I had a C-section and they just automatically came, the nurse came in the morning with a bunch of pills. I said, what are they? And some of them might have been for, what's it called? Like to heal wounds, and so those I took, but the painkillers, I said, why do I need painkillers? I'm not in pain. I mean, not obviously I felt it. I wasn't comfortable,
Right.
But I wasn't in excruciating pain. I said, if I'm in horrendous pain, I will let you know. And of course I never needed it. The same thing with oral surgery. Many times they automatically tell you, that they're going to give you, Tylenol with what's it called in it?
The Oxy, the Percocet. I think it's a Tylenol Oxy combination. So they give you the Percocet.
I don't know, but I know it has something else in it. And again, I'm like, I don't even need an aspirin. If again, it's really not going to bother me. And then talking about, let's say we were talking about pain. Oh yes, in terms of, I talked about the opioid epidemic, and those 100,000 deaths were synthetic opioids, which of course is what the doctors prescribe. But natural opioids is what our bodies make when we're happy and when we're doing fun things, when we sing, when we smile, when we laugh. The natural endorphins, the feel-good hormones, and the natural forms of opioid are produced in our body. So we have the ability to create that ourselves. And I tend to think, and I talk about this a number of times in my book, that one of the problems is as we grow up, we become so serious and, we take on many burdens, of course, causing stress, but children play. Children laugh. They run around, they sing, they dance, they're laughing and smiling. And, if the only times they'll cry is, let's say, if they fall and scrape their knee. But I think most of that, it's not the pain, it's just they're afraid, which is why when the mother says, oh, I'll kiss it and it'll feel better, and all of a sudden it feels well.
Amazing how that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time. How can people contact you or find out more about your book and your retreats? What's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, this is my book. It is From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, Wisdom for the Body, Mind, and Spirit. And the best way is my website. It's very simple. It's my name, Deborah, Deborah, Charnes, CHARNES.com. And when you go to deborahcharnes.com, there will be a tab for workshops and retreats. There's another tab for book. There's tab for Yoga RX, and the Yoga RX is a photo gallery of all different kinds of, again, it's my Yoga RX because I prescribe that instead of drugs. So each image will have copy underneath that tells you how to do the pose and what the pose is beneficial for.
That is awesome. And we will put her website also in the comments underneath this. But again, Deborah, I want to thank you for taking the time and sharing that with everybody here in the group. And anybody that's listening, or if you're catching this later on YouTube, if you're suffering from those anxieties or the stress, or you have that pain, Deborah's been there. She's got some neat methods and retreats and stuff. So I highly recommend that you reach out and contact her and find out more and give it a try. So thank you very much for joining us. And remember, everybody, that self-care is not selfish. It's essential for a healthier you. And we will see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.